yourself?
Beware your host, Jonathan Holmes.
And a telephone? Was that an old-fashioned telephone?
Yeah, it was. Let me disconnect it.
That's it. The second the live show started, someone wanted to call you and be like, "Hey, you get those pizzas? I'm
Sports
hungry."
friends.
Sports friends. Is it a
Yeah.
sports friends call?
No.
It could be. This is Douglas Wilson, everybody. Oh, I'm Jonathan Holmes. I'm the host of the show, Sup Holmes. It's a live stream show talking to video game people, and we have Douglas Wilson on the show this week, which is really exciting. Say hi to everyone, Douglas.
Hello, everyone. Douglas.
And I was
Or-
so expecting an accent from you, but you
No.
sound like a guy from across the street. You sound like your average American man. So
Yeah, it's disappointing.
Oh no, it's great. Now
No,
everyone's gonna. Your accent's fantastic. But you were living in Denmark for a little
I
while.
was, yeah, 5 years. Across the ocean. Wild, yeah. But I grew up in Jersey, so I'm actually secretly American.
Ah, well, secret's out. So you were born in New Jersey. You're a video game developer. You moved to Denmark for some reason. You
Yeah.
recently moved back. Well, I'm going to start with the video game development part. When did you start doing that, and what got you interested in making video games? Because your video games are weird.
Yeah.
Weird games.
Yeah.
Average guy games. No, sir.
Um, I started making video games in college, just in like college projects or whatever. Like our senior project, they're like, so for computer science, they're like, make anything. And most people are making like social networking websites and like whatever, and we're like, oh, we're gonna make a video game. So we made this crazy game called Euclidean Crisis. Most people don't know this, by the way. We made this crazy game called Euclidean Crisis that ended up making IGF in 2006, 2007. I don't even remember. And it's this crazy touchscreen game that we did for like a stylus. So at the time, which was like, it felt a little newer than it does now. But you were like, it was like this RTS game where you would like draw paths for your units, and then they would like go fly around and stuff.
Euclidean Crisis? What's a Euclidean?
It was some really dorky geometry joke. But but yeah, it was cool. We showed it at IGF that year, and I think that was my first like, whoa, indie games, this is crazy. And then got a little taste of that world, and then just kept making games for fun on the side after that, and like slowly ramped up. More.
Now, when you were in college, computer science, that's a pretty serious, grown-up pursuit. And I went to art school,
Right.
so I know not as grown-up as computer science. But for some people's final projects, they made like a 2600 game or some sort of interactive media, and people are like, "That's not art. What are you doing?" Some of the older people, and for computer science, I can imagine it was even more of a, hey, this was supposed to prove that you've got the skills to be a grown-up now. You're getting out of college, and you made Euclidean, what was the second one?
Crisis.
Crisis. Like Incredible Crisis, except Euclidean.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, we were totally the outcasts of. What's funny? I've talked to Soren Johnson, who's the lead designer of or was of Civilization 4. Also went to my university like years before me, but we were both talking about this as like the computer games kids in the computer science department. You were like weird. Like, why weren't you working on your startup or whatever? But I don't know, man. Computer games are sweet, so like it was good. So.
That's very good. But did you feel that sense that you were standing out and maybe going to be judged because your focus was more on...
Yeah, for sure, unfortunately. But I mean, whatever, like those fools are working for like whatever boring bank business software company. Now, they actually make a real salary, which I guess I'm jealous about. But I get to make weird ass computer games, so I feel like I won. So.
Yeah, you totally won. You're like Vince Vaughn in Old School. You're just doing it your own way, selling
That's
TVs,
right.
making big money. Eventually, I think you're going to be rich because nobody has made a game that as many developers have been talking to me about as Johann Sebastian Joust. People won't stop talking to me about it. Every freaking week I do this show. Someone says, well, that's cool, but Johann Sebastian Joust is a little bit better than that anyway. So, oh yeah, Wii U, asymmetrical gameplay, local multiplayer. Oh, Johann Sebastian Joust is better. So you've made this thing that the people who have gotten to experience it absolutely love, but it's yet to hit the big market.
Yeah.
What do you make of that? How does that feel on one end to make something that really talented game developers absolutely love, and on the other end, how does it feel to know that the public at large hasn't gotten to touch it yet?
It feels extremely frustrating.
I bet it does.
Yeah, no, it's been a little bit of a frustrating year. Right, so in 2011, we prototyped this crazy motion control game, Johann Sebastian Joust, and it was like, I mean, I kind of knew the idea would be fun, but it was like even like way better than I thought it was going to be, and that was great. And we showed it at all these festivals. And so, I spent a lot of this year talking to publishers and trying to figure out, like, okay, well, like, what the hell am I going to do with this weird game? And that, like, eventually, like, we got close, but, like, eventually the game was just a little too weird. And so it's been this kind of long road of, like, well, like, what do you do with this local multiplayer only game that you can't really do single player for? Like, what would it look like single player? And you can't really do networked multiplayer. Like, how would you play? Because it's a game where you actually have to push, like, people in real life.
Yeah, maybe for those who haven't heard about it or played it, let's talk them through what the game actually is. It's a PlayStation Move game, and it is a video game in a way, but there's no actual video. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. A lot of people get very angry when I call it a video game. There's no video, but whatever, man. Well, it was originally for Wiimotes, and then I realized the PlayStation Move controller would be even better because it's got this crazy LED light at the end of it, which is essentially like a giant pixel that I can like set the color of. And so what's sweet is you can tell from this giant pixel what team they're on, if they're still in the game. So you can signal all sorts of visual information with this big light, which is great because it means that you can do this like face-to-face game between people without a screen. So in this game, there's no screen. It's played with rumble, the music, and the light on your controller. And it's basically like this like 21st century martial art where you're trying to keep your controller still. And that sounds easy, but it's not when there are a horde of people coming at you to try to like push you or your controller, right? Because it's motion sensitive. And so when the music is slow, it's Johann Sebastian Bach's Brandenburg concertos, hence like the name of the game. So when the music is slow, the controller is like extra sensitive to motion. And so if I ever like kind of jostle it, or someone comes up to me and pushes the controller, or like pushes me, the light blows out like a candle, you hear an explosion sound, I'm out, I'm eliminated. So you want to be the last person standing. And this becomes a mix of like defense and offense, right? So like I'm trying to keep my controller away from everyone, and I'm also slowly inching up and like trying to push them. So it becomes like people start kind of like circling around each other like some crazy knife fight or something.
And has anyone ever gotten hurt playing it that you're aware of?
No, not really. I mean, yeah, it's a little rough. Like people will push each other, but I don't know, man. Like people push each other playing soccer or basketball
or Street Fighter. I have had people get very angry at me when I did even moderately well in Street Fighter. They took it to a physical level. And this game,
really?
Yes, that's kind of an old story for people who've been following me on Dtoid for a while. Yeah, I'll tell it to you briefly because I was playing Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition, I believe it was, with the owner of the arcade's son, who's a great guy. I haven't talked to him in a few years, but we're always on good terms. He's into lifting weights. He's a pretty strong guy, pretty aggressive. And since his dad owned the arcade, he figured, oh, well, I'm the best in the arcade. I play for free. I get to practice all the time. But I figured out the ducking jab into Shoryuken that does like a fierce Shoryuken's amount of damage. I kept doing it to him, and I won. And before I know it, I'm flat on the ground. He had turned and punched me in the chest, and I went very far and then down. And he stood over me, cowering over me, and went, "That's power." And then he walked away.
That's amazing.
And Johann Sebastian Joust invites those kinds of power
well, events. Okay, but not, I would say hopefully not as kind of like mean-spirited. I mean, I would say the opposite is Street Fighter is not a game where you expect to kind of have a wrestling match. So when you like do have that wrestling match, it's like kind of weird and you like maybe weren't prepared for it. Sure. With the idea with Johann Sebastian Joust is like you're prepared for it. So like you go into this crazy game knowing like, all right, like we're gonna do battle, like I'm ready. And then as a result, though, it's supposed to be kind of like a lighthearted version of that, right? Where
Right.
like no one's actually like, oh, I'm gonna murder you. And in fact, if you're playing at a party where someone gets like a little too aggressive or something, everyone's like, whoa, like cool it, man, like because it's
Huh.
more about the like. I think at least when I've shown it in public, it's more about kind of like the performance of it all.
Hmm. Well, you have to keep your controller still as you're screwing up somebody else's game.
Yeah.
So if you were to punch someone in the chest, chances are you could knock yourself out in the.
That is true. So the key of this game is like mastering that Bruce Lee move where it's just like all the force is in the arm. You know what I mean? Because the
Ah.
classic mistake everyone makes is they go to push and like their whole body rotates and so they get themselves out when they
Ah.
push. But
So
the
the
people who
one-inch
really,
punch.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
people who figure this out get very good at that. So
Huh, interesting. And a lot of people have been playing it since 2011. It's still very popular. So one of the ways you're trying to get it out there is through this Kickstarter project, which we should talk about as frequently as possible for people that are tuning in and out of the show.
totally.
It's Sports Friends. Is that right?
Yeah, totally.
It's your game and three other games. One
Yeah.
looks like a little chicken who plays basketball. Is that right?
Um, not quite. So Sports Friends. Okay, so the idea is you're me, and you have this crazy multiplayer only game, indie multiplayer game, and you kind of have to self-publish it. So you're like, what am I gonna do? So
Mm.
I have luckily all these really cool colleagues in the indie scene who have also been working on multiplayer only games, and so
Mm.
kind of inspired by like Wii Sports or I don't know the old summer games or something. We were like, well, what if we like put all these games together? Now they're kind of all sports themed, so it
Mhm.
kind of like made sense as some sort of like crazy quadrathlon or something. We could make this like whole package that felt like it had a lot of meat to it and really like make a stand for local multiplayer games. So it's me, Bennett Foddy's Pole Riders, which is the only released game of all of them, although he's going to redo it, Super Pole Riders, like a new
Ah,
version for the
cool.
package. This is the guy who made QWOP, so he's this like crazy. By the way, he's a philosopher at Oxford University. Did you know that? I bet you didn't know that.
I did not know that. I've been hearing a lot about him. He's making a game with Pendleton Ward,
Yeah.
creator of Adventure Time, for the LA Game Space
Yes.
Kickstarter. Right.
Which we're also big fans of. LA Game Space Kickstarter. But so we got Bennett Foddy, this crazy like abusive game designer, philosopher, genius from Oxford, and then we have Noah Sasso, who did this crazy game called Barabari Ball, which is basically like volleyball meets Super Smash Brothers with the crazy procedural tabla soundtrack, and it's rad.
Oh.
And Hokra by Ramiro Corbetta. And Hokra is this game I'm insanely obsessed with. It's this 2 versus 2, almost kind of like soccer hockey game, and it's very simple. You're just trying to get your puck in one or two corners, but it's got this like just the feel of it and the balance of it is really good, and it just leads to these like really deep tactics. So it's a simple game that's just like you could spend a lifetime mastering or whatever the phrase is. So
Mm.
yeah, it's these, and then Johann Sebastian Joust is the 4 games. So we're trying to do this like cohesive package of the 4 of them. Again, like a kind of Wii Sports, where you get this thing and there's 4 of these deeply replayable local multiplayer games that are hopefully accessible and 2 fun for spectators, right? Because I think a lot of times when we make video games, or like when traditional developers make video games, they're not thinking about spectators, but
Mm.
spectatorship can be really fun, right? And so, like we watch professional basketball or whatever on TV because it's like really entertaining and it's engaging and it's fun. So, I think we want to make, at least the 4 of us are really interested in making video games that can almost like a sport, like have that kind of like appeal over the years, like that
Ah.
there's no best strategy, like the game keeps evolving and people enjoy watching.
There's more and more of that this generation. To
Yeah.
me, this generation of games has been about a lot of different things, but one of the key elements has been the intimacy versus isolation stage of human development. Games have been focusing on how to play with that stage and give people both the best aspects of intimacy and isolation together, I think. And local multiplayer is just maxing out on the intimacy without a lot of the. It breaks down a lot of the barriers that come from just hanging out with strangers. Oh, what do
Yeah.
we talk about?
Yeah.
Do they like the Avengers? Maybe they're going to make fun of me for saying I thought the Avengers was pretty good. Joss Whedon, some people think he's anti-feminist, but no, you're just playing Johann Sebastian Joust. You don't have to worry about all of the awkwardness of intimacy. It brings people together with a different kind of language, the language of video games.
Yes.
It's pretty rad. That's my take anyway. What
Yeah.
yeah. You agree?
No, yeah, it's totally. I think you nailed it. I think if you, my take on it though, so you're asking like why now? Like, so I agree with you, and then the question is like, well, like why not 5 years ago? Why not? I think one key thing is that like as the indie game scene has developed, there's been all these events that have kind of come out of the woodwork the last few years. So stuff like the Gamma parties done by this Montreal game collective, Kokoromi. So, for example, a few years ago, GDC, they did this big showcase, Gamma 4, for like one-button party games. And we ended up showing our game, Brutally Unfair Tactics, Totally Okay Now, aka Button, at that event. There's stuff like No Quarter, which is this NYU commissions game artists every year to do a game specifically for this public space, right? And then they do this big exhibition in New York. Hokra and Barbari Ball in Sports Friends were both games commissioned for No Quarter.
Oh.
So like when Ramiro and Noah were developing their games, they knew that they would have to show them in this public space. So spectatorship was one of the things that they were thinking about making these games. So like I guess and then there's stuff like Baby Castles in New York City, Wild Rumpus in London, Prince of Arcade in Montreal. So there's all these like crazy game parties, exhibitions now. And this means like indie developers are now, if you're going to like make your game to show at one of these parties, you like suddenly have an audience and a venue to show these things. And now someone's explicitly like telling you like, okay, well you should like go make this game that will like be fun in a public setting. So I think there's like now this kind of like incentive in the indie world, at least in this one kind of area of the indie world, to make these games, right? And like it's great, like getting together with fellow developers and random strangers and just game interested people, and I don't know, throwing down in public and having laughs with people. So
absolutely. And parallel to all of this happening, Evo has gotten really big.
Yeah.
Evo's been around for a long time, but now, like, in terms of spectator, the views for King of Fighters 13 on Evo's Twitch channel were, like, through the roof. Nobody bought the game, but everyone wanted to watch it when someone who actually skilled was playing it. Have you ever thought about getting Johann Sebastian Joust shown at Evo? They're doing a whole Nidhogg, I think, is there. There's a lot of, like, games about fighting but aren't fighting games per se being shown.
I would love to, but I will say Barbari Ball, so one of the Sports Friends games, was at Evo this past year.
Was it?
And they did a tournament. Yeah, so that's because Noah comes from, and you're right, Evo is another great thread in this whole local multiplayer thing. Noah comes is from a fighting games background. Like he plays a ton of Street Fighter in these games. So Barbari Ball is very much like informed by the mechanics and the systems of fighting games. And so that's especially one-on-one Barbari Ball. I like two-on-two Barbari Ball because I'm more of kind of like a sports games guy, but he likes it one-on-one because he definitely comes from that like fighting game tradition. And yeah, he showed that at Evo. Like in Barbari Ball too, there are different characters that have different attributes, like really much like your traditional Street Fighter, Guilty Gear, or whatever, and so yeah, that showed well at Evo. If you know somebody at Evo, I would love to show Joust there.
Sure.
Like, put me in touch, man. I don't know. So.
Yeah, I think I know a guy. I'll send you an email about it. That would be exciting. So where did it come from for you? This urge to take a huge risk on a game that is so unconventional, so experimental, but at the same time doesn't like buy into. You weren't trying to send, it sounds like, a specific message. A lot of experimental games are also about something people have deep in their heart that they want people to know. Whereas you, sounds like you really wanted to invent a new sport. And video games and sports are kind of like, they don't always get along, video games and sports. And a lot of the reason a lot of people disliked the Wii when it first came out is because it was for normal people who like sports.
Right.
They wanted to, play games about a fantasy element that make you feel like you become someone else who's more interesting or more capable than you are. Whereas a lot of motion control games actually make people who are uncoordinated feel terrible about themselves. I know people who won't play Skyward Sword because the game is constantly saying, you suck at real sword fighting. And they're like, oh, no, I play games to feel like I'm good at sword fighting, not to be
Right.
told I'm physically bad at them. So what made you want to take that risk to make a game where people actually had to be physically coordinated to play it?
Yeah, no, lots to talk about here. So I think so. Okay, so I actually personally what the most rewarding thing about JS Joust for me is that it does appeal to like random people on the street and not just a kind of niche group of gamers, and that's really rewarding that the people who didn't think they liked video games all of a sudden are like, whoa, actually, like, this is really fun. Maybe I should take this stuff more seriously. And so that's really important to me. Now, of course, I love traditional video games, especially like immersive ones where you put yourself in this world. Like, of course, I'm actually like a big JRPG player. So, I grew up with like Final Fantasies, Chrono Trigger, whatever. And so that's like one really important thread of my own like gaming history. But right, there's this like other thread that's also a part of video games, which is this local multiplayer thing. And to me, specifically, calling attention to what's happening in front of the screen, like between the human beings, not just what's on the screen. And I think this is something that a lot of motion controller developers got really wrong in the last generation. And this is personally why I'm not as interested in like Skyward Sword, for example, which is like, to me, motion control isn't about like, with this like virtual reality technology, you'll get even more immersed in the world because you'll really be there. Or like, actually, it's the exact opposite with me. Like where motion control, to me, is like the slapstick comedy of video games, where it's like people doing hilarious shit, in front of the screen, where it's actually more fun to watch these people doing stupid stuff in front of the screen. And the key thing here is that like, we're not pretending to have this cool sword fight where we're in the world of like whatever. It's like, no, we all know we're acting like goons, but as long as we like recognize that and we own that, then it's like fun and it's kind of okay because like everyone at the party will have a good laugh. So I think a lot of the stuff I've done in the kind of physical games world, like Button and Johann Sebastian Joust, it's like, okay, well, let's all play the fool and we're going to own that, and it'll be okay and it'll be fun, rather than like pretending that like with new technologies we'll like take it to the next level and we'll be on the holodeck and really feel like we're in Hyrule or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. So to me personally, if I want to play a Zelda, and I'm a huge Zelda fan actually, like Wind Waker, Majora's Mask are like two of my all-time favorite games. But to me, I want to play that with the controller so that like I don't remember that I'm doing stuff in like the real world. Right, so that I'm really like zoned into the. With motion control, to me, it's like, okay, well, now we're foregrounding the fact like every minute I move this controller, I'm getting this reminder that I'm in the real world. So like, let's focus on the real world. So I guess that's my own kind of philosophy of motion control design.
Yeah, brilliant. It's similar to stylus control in that if you are controlling a character with the stylus, especially if you're touching the character, you're getting a constant reminder. Oh, I see my hand touching a guy.
Yeah.
I am not that guy. I am a guy like leading a guy around by a leash.
Yeah.
Likewise with motion controls, it's like, oh, I noticed my arm for a second. I'm not Link. I'm a guy who's pretending to be Link in his living room. That's not exactly what's hot on the streets.
Exactly.
Yeah. Ah, brilliant. So have you taken this to Nintendo yet? Have you said to Nintendo, by the way, I noticed how to make motion control games that are really good? How about that happen?
If there's anyone on Nintendo on this stream, listen, I'll make them some good motion control games. But I don't think they're very interested. To be honest, we actually talked to some people briefly when we were doing Joust, and I never got like a really clear answer. Just 'cause I don't think that they were super interested, and we didn't. We only got so far. But like I think, I heard some stuff like, not having a single player mode might be problematic for example, right? Like what would Johann Sebastian Joust single player mean? Like that doesn't make any sense. Like it doesn't, you can't figure that out. What, you just like stand in your living room and like try not to move it too fast, or like it doesn't. So that never like whatever, it never stuck with them. So I don't know, ask Nintendo, but like if they want, I'm right here and I'll make them some sweet games. So
you know what I'm gonna do after we're done with this show? I'm gonna ask Nintendo. I think they're gonna like it because I don't know when you talked to them last, but they're putting out a lot of games now that are at least about half of Nintendo Land is multiplayer only.
They are, and I think I'm trying to remember because I think one or two of them had seen it at like GDC and like these events and like E3, these events where we've shown it around. But yeah, no, I mean, someday it would be great to design stuff for because obviously they're interested in physical games too. I will say, I'd have to think more about the Wii U. I have to admit I was like a little disappointed when that hardware came out because it felt like this step back into the screen. I mean, now on one hand it's like different screens and that's exciting, but one of the key things behind Johann Sebastian Joust was this like eye-to-eye thing, and that like we're used to looking at each other when we play sports or board games or whatever, but when you're holding a video game controller, that like feels really weird because you're used to like looking at a screen. So I think that's like half the fun at Johann Sebastian Joust. It almost feels like you're doing something wrong or like something that you shouldn't be doing with video game controllers, and that's actually that subversion. Like that's a big word, but whatever, that subversion is like I think half of the like fun of that feeling and that experience.
Well, how do you think it would work with just Wii remotes, motion control? I mean, Motion Plus Wii remotes.
So the original version of Joust was prototyped for Wiimotes,
right?
And it was super fun. And now it's slightly less good for spectators because you don't have the light, which is so key to the experience of the current build of Joust. But it was still really fun. What I think I would do is use the speaker on the Wiimote to signal like who's in and who's not in and all this stuff. So you could imagine like kind of slow beeps and stuff that like coming out of the controllers themselves that would be signaling stuff about how you were doing or if you were out or not. So
could you have like a womp 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 when the guy screws up?
I'm still partial to this. Like right now it's this explosion sound when you lose, and it just something that feels like really violent and kind of amazing about it. Like also satisfying to me. So I think I would stick with the like explode you when you lose.
That was the most polite response I've gotten from a terrible idea ever.
No, it's okay, man. It's okay. I have. But here's this is true. Here's the real secret about like game design, which is like literally 70% of your ideas are crap. Like at least 70%, right? So the key is just to keep having ideas and keep making games until one sticks, right? Because like I've also worked on really totally failed projects that sound awesome on paper. But game design is like black magic. Like until you try it, like you don't know. And that's the thing too. Like sometimes you try wacky stuff that was like, oh haha, this is kind of a funny idea. That just ends up being kind of amazing. And it's like, let me give you an example. So me and this guy Bennett Foddy, this Quap guy, who's part of Sports Friends, he made this game GURP. Have you played this game?
I haven't. I've heard of it. It's it came out after Quap, right?
Yeah, and this game is amazing. Like the first thing you do when we end this interview is like you should go and play GURP. It's like one of my all-time favorite games ever. And it's this crazy mountain climbing game. Anyway, so like last year I got super obsessed with this game. And then I was like, well, okay, how do we show this? Like I want to show this at these like public local multiplayer events or whatever. But like it's kind of boring to watch somebody like hunched over a keyboard playing. So we were like, well, what if we like made a giant keyboard that you actually, so the part of the game is that you're like, you have to use all 26 keys on your keyboard to like slowly climb up these handholds in this mountain. And it's been described as Twister for your fingers. So we were like, what if it was just like Twister, like for your body? So I took 4 Dance Dance Revolution pads and made a giant keyboard, like with all 26 keys. And so then you're playing like on this giant keyboard and like you're kind of on all fours, like holding your two hands and then your legs on like another key, or maybe you're playing with 2 or 3 people all together, kind of coordinating. And this was one of those ideas that was like, haha, this will be funny. We'll try it once as a joke. But like, actually, it was like way better than I ever could have expected. And since we've been showing it at all these parties, right? So we like showed it at GDC's experimental gameplay workshop last year. I just showed it at this big party in New York this past week. So that's like another example of like the really good game ideas you think you have on paper often aren't that good, and the kind of weird prototype you just try on a lark often, and that's true of Johann Sebastian Joust, right? I was like, well, here's this idea of like moving in slow motion. I don't know, whatever, let's try this. And like, yeah, it was sweet. So I think that's like, this is a really good lesson, which is you can't be afraid to put out these just like really wacky ideas. Yeah, again, most of them will be crap, but like you won't know until you really think through all of them. So
Can you tell us about an idea that you really were confident, like, oh, of
yeah.
course this is going to be fantastic, but then when you played it, you didn't like it?
Yeah, so me and my colleagues back in Copenhagen, a big group of us were working on, because we were into this idea of face-to-face games. We had worked on this crazy game, Darkroom Sex Game. I don't know if you've ever heard about this.
I have, but I don't remember many details about it.
So it was this no graphics Wii game where you essentially had like virtual sex with each other or something. But
Okay.
it was kind of like this joke art exhibition where we would just say, hey, like fun Wiimote game, don't you want to play? And everyone's like, yeah, I love fun Wiimote games. And suddenly they find themselves having this like really awkward gameplay with only sound and rumble, where it's this kind of rhythm game back and forth between 2 people. And in fact, there's this crazy mode where there's 4 people and there's partners kind of competing against each other. Anyway, we don't have to go too much into that, but the cool thing about that game was like, whoa, if we have no graphics, we have this game where you look at each other and like, whoa, let's explore that in a more mainstream way. So before like I really figured out how to properly do that, we were like, well, what if we made this wizard dueling game with like Harry Potter versus Voldemort? I mean, not like actually with the Harry Potter IP, but that same idea where you're like, you know, there's this moment in every Harry Potter movie where he's like has the wand and then they like shoot at each other and there's like colored lightning and they're like doing this whole wizard battle or whatever. We were like, oh, we'll make that. And it'll be like Street Fighter, but like in the real world with wands and stuff. Turns out other people have explored this idea, and it's problematic for a lot of reasons. So anyway, we worked on this game in different iterations for like over a year, you know, when we had time, and you know, on this grant that we got, this art grant that we got to kind of explore it. And in the end, like, there were just a lot of problems with it, and in terms of like making it a deep system and making it fun to play and kind of all this stuff. So I mean, but like, it sounded like such a solid idea on paper, but until we really got into the like hairy meat of it or whatever.
Gross.
Yeah, that wasn't a good metaphor, was it?
No, I enjoyed it. You really picture biting into that clumpy, hairy piece of burger.
But you know, here's the other thing. From doing that, you know, I learned a lot of. I think that like it took me a lot of failed prototypes to really get to my philosophy of motion control game design.
Right.
I should also mention this stupid game Button, which like kind of amazingly ended up showing at IGF and is now on Steam and like Xbox Live Indie. That was another kind of joke. We were like, this is true. We were like literally drunk at my birthday party in 2010, and we were like, oh man, like wouldn't this be a funny idea? And then we kind of just like threw together this stupid prototype a few weekends later at some retreat that we did every year in Denmark, and turned out it was like really fun. So again, you know, one of the lessons I've taken, at least with party games, it's different for regular games. With party games is like, to me, it's important that it's fun from the very beginning. Like when we played Joust or when we played Button, like the very first playtest, even though it was only like half done or whatever, was still really fun. Whereas some of these other kind of like Wiimote ideas we try to force, it was like, oh man, that doesn't quite work, but like I know I really think this is going to be fun someday if we just like keep working on it or whatever. And then you just keep forcing it, but you like never really get it there. So I don't know. That's like a big lesson I've learned. So.
Ah, man. Not many people I know have worked this hard at it. What do you think it is about it that has kept you? You didn't give up after the first attempts. You thought, I know that there's something fun in this, and I'm going to keep trying. Was it the success of Button that kind of spurred you
Yeah,
to? Yeah. Well,
I think that's a big thing. But I think if you say you don't know people who worked this hard for it, I totally don't believe that. I just don't think people maybe ever even realize themselves or are upfront about all the kind of failed iterations they went through. I really get the feeling in talking to other indies that most successful indies also, you have to have a bunch of, I think, like kind of unsuccessful game prototypes or lessons that you learn even on one game where you keep iterating on it over and over again to,
oh, sure.
to get to that good idea.
I meant to say work so hard on the no video motion control. I mean, that's a big risk to take, and there's very little precedent for that working, but you've made it work.
Well, so I mean, here's the other thing. Like, I've been very lucky. So I just finished a PhD in, like, I was doing wacky game design stuff for my PhD, which is a sweet PhD to do, by the way.
Yeah.
And that's why I was in Copenhagen. And so, like, for a few years, like, that was like I could do that for research or whatever, right? So I didn't have to worry about profits, right? Which was important because I wouldn't have been able to do a lot of this stuff, at least as a full-time pursuit. So now I that I finished, I tried to go full-time indie. So we have the studio Gute Fabrik, which is based in Denmark and in New York now. And so yeah, we're pursuing all these ideas that we've done, and we'll see if we make that work. Maybe there's some other world where I go back to the research world, whether soon or in a decade or whatever, and do wacky ideas that I don't have to worry about selling at some point. But I think, I do think though, like, I think a lot of people in the games community, whatever, like, rag on research or academic games or whatever. And I think actually that, like, academia plays a really important role in this whole ecosystem, because it's like, yeah, you don't have to worry about sales or the bottom line. You can just for years, like, dick around in your office and, like, make weird crap and, like, basically throw ideas at a wall until one works. So I think
that's science.
Yeah, that is science. Yeah, I don't know. So I think that's good and important.
Yeah, absolutely. I love science. We have a bunch of questions that came in. I want to ignore them because there's so many things I want to ask you, but that would be rude. Ifra Dagini asks, "What's Plan B if the Kickstarter doesn't get funded?" You have a
Don't
Plan
know.
B?
Don't know. I honestly don't know. Well, we want to figure out something, because I'm more than anyone else desperate to get Johann Sebastian Joust out to the like the thing that bugs me. Let me get this off the chest, my chest. The thing that bugs me the most is, like, there's been all these people on the internet or whatever, freaking internet, who who are like, this is some elitist game that they only show in, like, New York and at elitist parties, and, like, whatever, man. He like why is he being so elitist with this game? Like, no, like, I really want to get this game out, but there's all these, like, technological and business and release challenges and legal challenges, and it's like I can't even tell the full story, but it's nuts, and we've been, like, working hard to put this thing out. So, like, yes, like, desperately, like, events are fun and that's been great, but no, it's not supposed to be this elitist thing that you only get to play at events. Like, I really want everyone to play this game, so I think we've just been working really hard on this Kickstarter. To say, well, let's like put all our attention here, and then if it doesn't work, yeah, we'll figure something out, I guess. I don't know.
It's gonna happen. It's too good not to happen. That's my opinion.
Okay.
I'll fund it if I have to. Vlambeer asks, I believe this is Rami, but it could be anyone at Vlambeer. Good old Rami, an expert by his own account at Johann Sebastian Joust, asks about, he wants to know for his own ego about his encounter with you at PAX.
This is great because there's no fact checkers here, so I can say whatever I want. So I want to, like, let's set the record straight to everyone on the internet right now. So Rami from, one half of Vlambeer, this
Super
Dutch
Great Box
game studio. That's right.
Yeah, Yeti Hunter.
Is not very good at Johann Sebastian Joust, but we all let him pretend, like, we all let him think that he's good at Johann Sebastian because we don't really want to hurt his feelings. So, he thinks he's really good at Johann Sebastian Joust, but it's kind of like when you let your like young kid beat you at a board game, so they don't feel really bad about themselves. That's Rami with Johann Sebastian.
Wow, that's what your encounter was? Just you placating him and
Yeah,
humoring him?
totally.
Wow, poor
No,
guy.
no, actually, I'm messing around. What's great about Rami? So Rami is, a really good indie friend of mine, and he's kind of like my arch rival, my arch nemesis at Joust. So it's crazy because like we go to all these gaming events. So we have now jousted, and like I'll bring Joust, and he's bringing whatever Luftrausers or Super Crate Box, showing it at all these events. So we've like both kind of coincidentally traveled around the world together, jousting in various locations. So we've jousted in Germany, in Copenhagen, in Holland, in Seattle, in New York, in San Francisco, in Boston, and so it's become this crazy thing with this like round 7, like Thailand or whatever, it's like Japan, and then it's just like we two of us pop on the screen. So it's been kind of really good training with it. The problem is though that like Rami and I have both played this game so much that like I literally don't like I can't play unless I really handicap myself, which I'll do with kind of new players because like we're just way too good at that. It's because we've played way too much.
Yeah. Huh.
So I really look forward to playing him because he's like one of the few people in the world who can give me a proper like run for my money at this game.
You're like the George Foreman and Muhammad Ali of Johann Sebastian Joust.
Totally, man.
Pretty
Totally.
amazing. Somebody should make a documentary about you, because there's this Beard Wars show. It's literally just beards, and people love it because
Wow.
the passion applied to something that everyone is familiar with but has never taken to that level is really, really intriguing to people. So people who don't care about beards watch the show. Everyone knows what it's like to slap fight with a friend and to be competitive on a simple intrinsic level, but no one's played Johann Sebastian Joust. A documentary could expose the world to it. I love my idea.
Make it happen, and we've been talking about this a lot. So we want to joust on every continent, including Antarctica. So if you can make like Antarctica would be like the season, and then like the extra season finale would be get us on the International Space Station. Like we want to play zero gravity, like 3-dimensional joust. I'm serious. I'm not kidding.
I know you. I wouldn't be laughing unless you're serious. And it's laughter of excitement because it's going to happen.
We've actually, this is true. We've literally been talking about me and Rami taking a zero gravity. These like free fall flights where like you get whatever like a half minute of no gravity. If we could afford it, one of these days we're going to take that and play Joust if we can.
Do you know James Swarsky and Lisanne Pajot, the directors of Indie Game, the movie?
No.
I'm going to email them after we're done with this. After I email Nintendo, I'm going to email Lisanne and James to see because they are ripe for a new project. That's a pretty good movie, that Indie Game, the movie. We've got more questions, though. I'm sorry. Sorry I didn't ask them yet. Pio Conanalog asks, is Johann Sebastian Joust influenced by the New Games movement? There's a New Games movement. I don't even know what that is. I'm going to find out, though. Yeah. Do you think there might be a commercial space in the future for computer-aided experiences like this? Maybe its own console? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Wow.
So New Games movement is this kind of crazy hippie movement in the late 60s. These hippies come together. Hippies. It's more complicated than that. But these people come together, and there's kind of a countercultural bent to it, almost like an anti-Vietnam War bent to it. Playing games, but trying to bring community together. Starts off in the Bay Area, and then really kind of develops in the 70s with these kind of playground games, folk games, street games, bringing different parts of the community together to like enjoy togetherness through gameplay. And so this is something I've written about extensively in my PhD dissertation, and it's like a really big precedent for me, or something that I think about a lot, or like games that I study when I make motion control games. So for sure, like to me, these kinds of street games, playground games, new games, as they were called in the 70s, is a really big inspiration for me. So yes to that. and you can read it more about it in my really boring, pretentious PhD dissertation.
I'm sure it'll be good. It's not going to be pretentious. You don't have a pretentious bone in your body. You're just excited about life.
That's a lie, I'll have you know, my friend.
Really?
Yeah, totally.
You seem so down to earth and of the people.
but like when you're in academia, you gotta you gotta use the jargon. You gotta it's a big game. You gotta play the game.
Yeah.
It's a good game. I like it. It was fun.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem to me pretentious means the pretense that you are better than other people in some way. And you don't have that at all.
Because I'm not better because I'm not better than anyone except I'm better than Rami at Johann Sebastian Joust.
I figured you'd say that. So what do you think of the idea of a console? Some would say the Wii was starting this, but kind of half started it.
Yeah.
A console that is purely non-video
yes.
multiplayer experiences that involve physicality without pretending you're someone that you're not. You play as yourself in these.
I would make that console if I had any money or connections, which I don't. But so what I would like to do, right, I think what would make a lot of sense for Johann Sebastian Joust would be kind of like maybe one day manufacturing my own hardware or something. And what I'd love to do is you can imagine, call it a console or some device or whatever it is that you can then make kind of different controllers for. So yeah, gyroscope with a light or accelerometer with a light on that allows you to do a lot of stuff like Johann Sebastian Joust. But also imagine like a blindfold with proximity detection or a ball with whatever, right? So there's all this with like a speaker in it. So like I mean there's like I think and I would love to do this, make all these kind of like digitally enabled, multimedia enabled party games, weird devices. And so I think I think maybe the toy market more than the console market would be kind of like a avenue for that. I think it's maybe a tiny bit ahead of its time right now. Especially people are always like, oh, smartphones, like can't you just use that? And that's, I think I would like to, I've been saying I'd like to do this line, and it's just been on the back burner because we're working on all these projects, but we would like to make these line of like physical party games for smartphones, but I think the technology is still pretty limited on smartphones, and also the form factor and how resilient they are to breaking and like all this stuff. So I think in 5 or 10 years, that's probably even for smartphones will be a little bit more viable. But I think there's like really wackier stuff you could do with not just smartphones, but like hardware that's developed precisely for the purpose, right? So like holding a Move controller really works because it feels like you're almost holding a tennis racket, and there's this, unlike a phone, there's this beautiful, super bright LED light at the end, which is gorgeous. And I'm going to sound like some sort of like marketing shill or whatever for PlayStation, but that controller is amazing, and it is the most underrated part of gaming technology from the last 10 years, easily. Like, to me, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is my rant. Like, the PlayStation Move controller is way more innovative than the Kinect, I think. Because, like, the Kinect, the Kinect is great, but it's still this very, like, we're all, like, looking at this screen, playing in front of this screen. Where the Move is crazy. The Move is basically, if you have multiple moves, you have all these pixels moving around in space. It's like a fluid screen that the players are carrying with them. That's nuts. Like, once you're carrying around the screen with you in your hands, that's, like, madness. And it allows games like Johann Sebastian Joust, which are totally, literally outside the box of the screen. So anyway, I love this light, and that only works because it's this specially designed thing that is resilient to breaking, and it has this beautiful light, and so I think someone should be making these kinds of dedicated hardware devices.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many things I want to say in response to that. One is that we might not even have phones in 10 years. It's all just going to be, in our ears. And people are going to be desperate, I think, at that point, because human beings are designed to want to physically interact with things. We're still animals. So when we have the capacity to get rid of all physicality, that's when we're going to be most hungry for it. When practically speaking, it is easier to do important things without touching something. That's when everyone's going to want to grab a virtual tennis racket and hit each other with it. So I think you're right on. soon enough, you're going to be able to put out your Johann Sebastian Joust console. That'll be like the Mario Brothers for it. Everyone will buy it. It'll be great. But also, you were saying something really smart, but I shouldn't rant because there's other questions. Rats. Oh, yeah. How would you make a Connect game? It segues very well into that. Sermon asks, how would you make a Connect game?
I would.
Yes.
Again, what I was saying, I'm particularly excited about the Move. I still think the Kinect is really cool, but I think the key is not to focus too much about what's happening on the screen, but to make people do really silly stuff in front of the Kinect so that it's fun. And so like Dance Central is a really good example. Now Dance Central isn't quite as like playing the fool because it's like more serious. Like people can actually look pretty good playing Dance Central, like not me, but other people. So I haven't actually done much hacking with the Kinect, so like I don't have some sort of like, this is this grand idea I'm gonna do, yeah, I think we've only scratched the surface with, and actually, to be honest, I'm pretty disappointed with the current lineup of Kinect games. But here's the thing, like I don't even think motion control games are the same medium as video games. Like, and this is what I learned the hard way after like years of some failed motion control prototypes, which is like it really requires a whole different way of thinking. And so I think the problem is, and this is why you see all this shovelware, right, for the Wii. Like after we've all played Wii Sports, and there are a few other really good games like WarioWare. Smooth Moves is amazing. There's a few other people who really got it, but it was usually Nintendo who had been working with this thing. But third-party developers was like, I don't know, if you're EA or whatever, it's like, okay, well, let's just take our game developers from this team and I just like go make a Wii game. But like it really, you got to rewire your brain in terms of thinking about the tech and the design of motion control. So I think maybe it'll be this like next generation of people who have finally experimented with this stuff, who like really know how to develop for motion control. So
I'm assuming people who grew up with it too. The 5 or 6 year olds now whose first console is Kinect. Whoa, you got so big.
Sorry.
That's okay. I thought you were piecing out on me. Like, see you later.
No.
Absolutely out of the show. But I'm with you on that. The Wii, my sense of it is they half wanted to appeal to people who don't like video games while appealing to people who do like video games at the same time, because the Wii was this console that was like the anti-game console, everything that people imagine video games about, which is sedentary, pushing buttons, really focused on pretending you're somewhere else. It's the opposite of all of that, and they didn't know what to do with it. It's a sad thing. I've been meaning to write about it for a while, but I probably won't because it's just too depressing.
But just really quick, I think there's probably a lot of game developers out there who have now learned those lessons doing kind of Wii titles that maybe didn't work out so well. So I wouldn't be surprised if suddenly you saw like a new wave of motion control games that were way better, right? Because like now people have been doing the Kinect, doing the Wii, doing the Move, and failing or succeeding and to various degrees, and now have learned those lessons in the back of their head. So
I hope so.
I think it's going to be on its way up. So.
Yeah. I hope that's the case. For Kinect, I like Dance Central. Yeah. The Cookie Monster game, which name suddenly escapes me. Double Fine made some of the better Kinect.
Kinect Party is really good by Double Fine, but Double Fine really gets it too. I think unlike most developers, which is motion control as deeply social experience, as just being goofy, and I think having a sense of what Double Fine does really well is having a sense of humor. Which again goes back to my thing is like I see motion control very much as like it's the exact opposite of virtual reality. It's like humor and really like using motion control as an opportunity to have some fun laughs with some friends.
And it's interesting because oftentimes comedy-based games fail because they can't help but be. It seems like the game thinks it's funny, and you just get to witness the game being funny, whereas people want to be in a game and be the person who is funny. But if a game just tells you jokes, and oftentimes those games are at the expense of the person playing it. There's a lot of games that make fun of gamer culture. People think, oh, that's going to be funny. I think Max Hazard was the name of one of them, and it's just making fun of game tropes. Yeah, it was kind of funny. The voice of Job from Arrested Development. I don't know if you've seen that show. Yeah,
Are you
you'd think.
serious? That's like literally my all-time favorite TV show.
Yeah, me too. You'd think that would go over really well,
Yeah,
but
it doesn't.
because the people felt somewhat out of the joke. They felt like they were even the butt of the joke in the game, and it did not do well, despite the fact that it was relatively clever and well acted. But anyway, now I'm getting off. Oh, I just want to talk to you about video games, but I have to
I want to
do
just talk to you about Arrested Development. Okay.
Sinistar in the background has told me it's Eat Lead, The Return of Matt Hazard. Pretty great game, says Sinistar. Thanks, Sinistar. He's the engineer of our show. So you mentioned before artist grants. How do you go about getting an artist grant to make a video?
You live in Scandinavia. The welfare state is amazing. 2 thumbs up. Free healthcare? No, this is true. Check this out. This will blow your mind.
Yeah.
In Denmark, not only is college free for Danish citizens, you get paid to go to college for 6 years. Like you get a stipend as a student.
Wow. Really?
That's amazing. Yeah.
And
Of course, this.
Are they happy? Is it a country of happy people, or is everyone just sitting around eating potato chips and don't care about life because they got all the stuff they want?
It's rated the happiest country in the world. Now, of course, listen, there are problems as well. You know, of course, there are things that I like about America more, but there are a lot of really cool things about Denmark. But okay, so one of these, if you're an independent game developer, one, you don't have to pay for healthcare if you're self-employed, which is huge. 2, you know that if it doesn't go well, you still have this like really nice welfare net under you to catch you. 3, there are these like kind of like arts organizations, like for example, the Danish Film Institute. And these are not like investments. So it's not like you owe like 20% of your profits to the investors. It's literally like basically like artist money. Like here's a grant. Like, of course, you have to do this huge grant application, and that takes a lot of work. But like, if they accept it, then it's like, it's basically free money. I mean, you have to show milestones. You can't just like go blow it on crack and booze or whatever. But which would be sweet. But, no, I don't know. But so and for example, I didn't get one for Johann Sebastian Joust, but we're working on this adventure game called Mutazione, and it's still in the very early stages. I was working on a lot of kind of procedural sound stuff this summer on that, and we've been working on that partially on this grant. So yeah, it's I think it's not surprising that you see all these kind of amazing indie games coming out of Scandinavia, like Limbo is an example of this, and a lot of people don't know this. Limbo got all these Danish Scandinavian artist grants in the early stages. I mean, that's like that game wouldn't exist without that grant funding. All the Limbo guys are in Copenhagen, so we know that the team. In fact, I used to work just underneath them.
Oh, awesome! I've only met one of them once, but I was really impressed with how much he cared about each individual's experience with Limbo. He wasn't thinking about the big picture or even making a lot of money, and he knew right off the bat, like, yeah, there's no precedent for a black and white game about watching a boy die becoming a huge moneymaker. So at the time, he didn't seem like he thought it was necessarily going to be
right.
But he was really fascinated with each person's laughter, and then like shock, and then tension, and then excitement, and then fear that they went through with Limbo, which to me is probably a piece of art to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Art is a dumb word because some people will say the art of deer hunting, or the art of, you know, the manual sexual stimulation of a pal. That's usually not how they word it, but art is thrown around a lot. I kind of hate the word because you never know what somebody means by it when they use it. But recently, and I did want to ask you about this, a bunch of video games were put at the MoMA as pieces of art, and then a writer, I think his name is Jonathan Jones, for The Guardian UK said, I'm sorry, but video games aren't art because they're interactive. And who better to ask about that? A man who makes video games that are all about interacting. Not one cutscene in any of your games that I've played.
So the first thing I'll say is I am reading internet blogs or whatever. Internet. Last night I stumbled on this amazing thing, which I tweeted this out last night. But I found this whole flame war about cooking and food, and there's this big apparently this big debate on whether food is art.
Oh.
And it was amazing because something there was this like exactly like this Jonathan Jones video games aren't art article. There was this really cranky, I forget what publication, some kind of famous publication. There was this cranky guy saying, "Oh, food is not art," like for all these reasons. And it
What
sounded
about the culinary arts?
but it was
Gosh darn it.
it was amazing because it was like the exact same debate. It was so weird. It was like being in this exact parallel world, which just made you think like, oh God, like how many is X art like conversations are we having like across all these? I just thought so. To me, it was so telling. It was so funny just to see this exact same discussion. But I think it's a silly discussion. There's a lot of thoughts on this. I mean, games have been art for decades. If you go back to the 20th century and look at, like Yoko Ono making these crazy chess variations, like as political art, or like, so number one, if you're an art historian, you like know that games have already been shown very prominently in the world's most famous museums. And two, like whether or not you want to call it art, and there are both good and bad reasons why we might want to call it art. Obviously people are doing really important, creative, and expressive things with video games, and they deserve to be shown to pretty obviously, right, to like a wider public, and for people to realize that they should be taken seriously as like a creative form. Now, sorry, someone turned on the sound.
Oh, that's okay. Can you hear my dog barking?
I can as well. Yeah.
That sucks.
That's art. No, it's not. Or maybe it is. But yeah, I think the real what's at stake here is trying to get the wider world realizing that amazing things are happening in video games. And whether or not we're going to show that at MoMA or not, I don't think that's more a symptom than like what's interesting here, which is, can we get the wider world to understand why video games are really awesome and important? And that, I guess, to me is why, with something like a Johann Sebastian Joust, why it is important to me to try to reach a larger audience. And to have these, I almost see like Johann Sebastian Joust as kind of like ambassador game, which is like, well, okay, maybe you can't handle Limbo, but like, here's a game that kind of looks like the sports you grew up playing on the playground. Like, check it out. Like, video game controllers, they're actually pretty sweet. Like, maybe you should actually rethink your opinions on the medium. So,
well, that's what I've been right out the gate. I really liked what the Wii was trying to do.
Yeah.
And then I ended up loving the Wii for very different reasons, because it ended up being the home of like the weirdest games that weren't quite for people that hate video games, and they weren't quite for people that only want like big budget games. It was like right in between. A lot of great games in there. But it started off as this kind of ambassador console. Miyamoto even said he designed the Wii in part in mind with a waifu-meter. Have you heard about the waifu-meter? Yeah. So if his wife liked it, then maybe it was his wife was his target audience, basically.
Right.
Which is pretty interesting, and with varying levels of success on that. But is there any credence? We'll get specific. Is there any credence to this idea that if you interact with something, then that means it's not a reflection of the artist's intent? If you give the audience some flexibility with how they interact with the art that you make.
No.
Okay.
The zero credence. And it's ridiculous, because anyone who says that actually doesn't understand the history of 20th century contemporary art. Like, for decades, people have been doing non-digital like performance art and interactive art installations. And that's like, and everyone from like Marina Abramovich to I don't know, we could geek out on art, but like, number one, no, because the world's most famous museums for decades have been showing interactive art. Period. End of story. GG. So first of all, the debate's insane because it's completely ahistorical. Two, no, I mean, there's just as much expressivity setting up a system as there is, I don't know, making a painting, which of course I love paintings, but sure. As long as you're creating something whether it's code or pigment on a paper or like a piece of marble that you cut in a specific way, you're like still creating something. So you can always still see the hand of somebody or a team of people creating something. So yeah, no, it's patently a ridiculous point of view, I think. So.
Well, I'm not surprised, but good. It was good to get it out of your own mouth. And
Totally.
I could talk about it too. Should I?
Right.
I'll talk about it just a second.
Yeah, good.
Do you know James Kochalka? He's a guy. He's a comic book artist and kind of devil may care philosopher on all things creative. He's a
Huh.
neat guy. Yeah, he's working with the Pixel Jam guys on a game.
Cool.
Yeah, Glorkbart's Wild
Okay.
Adventure or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know the Pixel Jam guys.
Oh yeah, they're neat. He says that art and play are the same thing because they are both places where your mind goes to figure out to process yourself and your life, and it also figure out the world around you and the people around you. And when we play, like with Johann Sebastian Joust, when you're playing, sure it's fun because it's competitive. That's not really art. Competition to me isn't necessarily art, but getting to know the person you're playing with is an intimacy there. And art, when it's at its best, you feel intimately related to both the people who you share it with and the artist. And I feel like I got a sense of who you are as a dude through Johann Sebastian Joust.
Interesting.
Like,
Okay.
as a
Interesting.
statement in itself that you said, "Oh yeah, years of my life, constant stress, worrying if this thing is going to be successful and all the people that have gotten into it is going to be successful. Yeah, I'm going to dedicate my limited time on this planet to making a game about waving a wand to Bach. Or I'm sorry, yeah, it is Bach.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
That says something about who you are. So I got to
Hmm.
know you in my own mind anyway through the fact that you even made it, and then I get to know people as I play it with them in a form of not quite dance, but close to it. So that's my thought on that. I could go on
I
about
really like it. I think that's well, I mean, I'm very glad to hear that, but that to me that's spot on. The thing I'll say is I think I have to be honest, I don't have that much patience for a lot of art games.
it.
Just personally, because I think there's this naive view of like art has to be like the artist bears their soul and through their turmoil you'll like read and figure out like or like engage with this message that they've carefully encoded in this piece. And I think a lot of art, especially contemporary art, is a lot more complex. So what I'm interested in more is instead of like expression, like Johann Sebastian Joust is a metaphor of my like, difficult childhood where no, like Johann Sebastian Joust is like a fun party game. But it's good to me that you kind of can see the creative mind behind it or something. So that this idea of style is like expressive style so that you recognize the creative hand behind it. That to me is I think what I'm interested in. So all right, so Bennett Foddy. When you see a Bennett Foddy game, like the minute you play GURP, even if you didn't know it was Bennett Foddy, if you know who he is, you're like in the know in indie games. You're like, oh, like of course this is a Bennett Foddy game, right? Because you just know when you play one of those games, he really has this like signature style and kind of humor that's just totally him. And so that I think is important to me to the art of games. But I don't think it has to be this like we're gonna say something deep or like make you cry. Right? Remember there was this all like conversation about like are like games will never truly be great until like a game can make you cry or whatever. There's so much that art and creation and whatever and design can do, and so for me it's about honing a personal style, like you're saying, getting to know both, which is great, both the mind of the designer, but also the people you're playing with, and I think that's where like a lot of people focus on these single player games where they're like you will have this experience by yourself and you will get this message from me the designer, but well it doesn't have to just be like that. Like also deeply social experiences can also have an expressive style behind them, and that's important.
Absolutely. I hate the whole idea that if it's fun, then it's not art. I would say
Right.
90% of the art I've ever enjoyed has been really fun.
Yeah,
And it's also
absolutely.
really interactive. A really well-designed painting has your eye darting around the
Yep.
screen the same way a
Yep.
puzzle game might. I was just playing the new game by the Seaman guy, Ute Saito is his
No,
name?
I haven't played it.
It's called Aereo Porter. You just sort luggage. The game.
And it's good.
It keeps your eye moving around the screen in a way that doesn't exhaust you, but keeps you stimulated and interested in the events while soothing you with airport sounds, and then suddenly going combo, like really angry and excited when you do well.
Okay, I
it's
like
this
that.
weird mismatch. Yeah, it's like a guy dreaming about airports, and you get to be in the dream. Pretty weird. But yeah, to me that didn't make me cry, but it was a side of Ute Saito I certainly got to see, and to me that's legit. That's what art is to me, anyway, is getting to know dudes through the stuff they make and playing it in my mind. Sermon asks, there's more questions. Rats, sorry guys, I've been ignoring you. I feel like such a jerk. Impossible Plant asks, how does one move to Scandinavia? I think he wants in on some of that grant money.
I have no clue, and it is not. How does one stay in Scandinavia? I don't know. Like, they didn't seem to want to give me a visa, so I mean, I moved back to New York for other reasons. But yeah, listen, there are major kind of political problems in Scandinavia, especially Denmark, with how they treat immigrants and xenophobia. So yeah, being an immigrant in Denmark has
Not
its
great,
problem.
huh? Yeah, sounds like it.
It
sounds like when you were talking before about the setting of being able to put your mind at ease and not worry about eating and sleeping and say, what do I actually want to do with my life instead of just survive life?
Yeah.
It sounded a lot like there's this talk by John Cleese I talk about on the show now and again about how to be creative. And he says that you have to put your mind in a state of playfulness and be with people that are going to want to take your ideas and see how far they can push them instead of ever shutting you down. Like
that's everything.
No. Oh, yeah? Yeah, you're with me on that.
Complete 100%.
I'm not sure if capitalism really is indicative to that. That sort of, let's take some risks and have some fun and not worry about starving. For me, it's very hard to write even about video games, which I consider a creative thing, or talk to you. Like, if this show was millions of people were watching it and I had like a crew that was all going to starve to death unless I made it really entertaining and funny, I would just end up, I don't know what I would do. I would just watch videos of Charlie Rose and copy him, I guess.
Right.
Which would destroy any sort of expression of self I'd be having. So only because this is a small show that really, I think video game developers and strange people are the only people that actually watch it. And because of that, I can just be myself and hopefully do something that over the test of time will be shown as a reflection of who I was as a dude. But so basically, if this wasn't a communist show, it wouldn't exist. But what do you make of that? Do you think who's better for creativity, communism or capitalism?
I think it's got to be a mix. And I think so. There's a lot of stuff I love about Denmark. I mean, aside from kind of really whack immigration policies, but I think one of the other problems, though, with Denmark, well, it's good in many ways, which is it's not a very ambitious place because it's almost like too easy there. And one of the things that's really great about moving back to New York is that there's this really kind of like almost scrappy like group of kids and independent game developers like who maybe don't have a lot of money and it's tough to get by in New York because it's expensive, but they're still doing it anyway for the love. And so that kind of like almost the conditions of adversity, I think, has been really positive for the in some ways. Of course, not in other ways, for the New York independent games scene. So, part of the reason, as much as I love Denmark, that I'm motivated to move to New York is I have so many of my favorite game developers are in New York. So of course Ramiro and Noah, who are part of Sports Friends, but also Zach Gage, who did Spell Tower, the Baby Castles guys, Kaho Abe, Matt Parker, just all these kind of like really wacky new media artists and independent game designers doing crazy stuff in New York. And I think there's a reason that's happening in New York as opposed to other places. So I actually think America has that sort of kind of crazy like striving for like we're just going to do crazy stuff and I'm going to keep working and I'm really motivated is like the flip side of that coin. So to me,
Yeah.
it's been like having had one foot in the New York world and one foot in Danish world. Like I think it's maybe about balancing those or something. But whatever it is to me, everything is about having a good community behind you. So in Denmark, that was like me and my colleagues would get drunk and have fun and make these games together. In the case of Joust, is like mostly my own my own game, but that was done in a room at a game jam with other people who were like helping me test and like laughing along with me. And Johann Sebastian Joust would never have happened if I was just alone in my office making that by myself.
So people have to be physically with other people.
I think so. Maybe not at the moment of development. Like, so for example, in New York, maybe someone's not there in my office when I'm making a game, but we'll go out for drinks every Friday, or like I'll see people all the time at like exhibits around the city, and you talk to people about your games, and you go out and have laughs and have drinks with people and then talk about your ideas. So I think some people make it work for them over the internet, like on forums and TakeSource and whatever. To me, that's really difficult. It's possible, but it's difficult. Whereas like actual physical place matters, and being part of a local community where you have events and you go out for drinks, and maybe you even get together like at game jams or whatever. So I think that kind of John Cleese's logic is totally on point.
Awesome. Yeah, glad we talked about it. Whoa, Vlambeer's back. He wants you to talk about Proteus. What's Proteus?
Man. Okay, what? You don't know what Proteus is?
No, tell me about Proteus, please.
Are you kidding?
I'm sorry.
It's good. It's good. No, it's okay. It's good that that's funny. I know Rami's just trolling this. Rami's asking that because I'm super obsessed with this game. This is like the greatest game, or like one of the greatest games of the last few years, and it's like super important that everyone in the stream like goes and plays this game immediately.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really good. So Proteus is this. It's a single player like music exploration game, and it's been compared to Dear Esther a lot, which I think is fair and not fair, which is not much happens. Like there's not that much challenge, or there's no enemies. But you walk around this island, kind of like in Dear Esther, in a first-person perspective. And there's all these beautiful creatures, and everything is synced to music. And it's almost like The Orb or Stars of the Lid or some crazy electronic band is scoring your journey through this colorful, almost like 8-bit-ish world. And the music and the sound is by this guy, David Kanega, who is amazing. This guy is to me like one of the most important people in the whole video game industry these days. He's also the guy who did the music and the sound for Dtoid.
Oh, okay.
You know that crazy PS3.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we've had Sean McGrath on the show.
Yeah.
So yeah, I should know that.
So he's this crazy electronic musician who thinks a lot about not just music and games, but really how do we tie all the players' actions to like procedural music so that the music really is like responsive to what you do. I've been working with him. I got to meet him, and that's been great. He's done the music for a lot of my weird installations, game installations. But anyway, so Proteus is it's an open beta now for Mac and PC. He's still the Ed Key is the developer with David, and they're both working on it. Still, it was up for IGF this past year, and the Nuovo Award, but also won the Sound Award at Indiecade last year. So it's this kind of like in the indie world, it's this kind of like underground hit. I hope when it's finally released and distributed, it'll get more attention. But it's just beautiful. I mean, it's a short experience, kind of max 30, 40 minutes. You walk around this island, and I don't want to spoil too much, but the seasons change, and you kind of like you find the right places to go. And it's not really about challenge. It's about like interactivity and enjoying like this music and these beautiful colors. And it's like there's almost this really poignant, reflective, meditative experience. Anyway, this thing like blew my mind. It's one of the most like beautiful, kind of transcendental experiences I've had playing video games. Maybe I've oversold it now. I hope not, but I really think this is incredible. It's called Proteus, Proteus, and it gets my top recommendation.
Sounds awesome. I feel like a schmuck for not playing it yet.
It's okay. You can still play it.
Yeah, that's a good thing about video games. Is that
Yeah,
they're
totally.
always there. They never totally go away. Did you play Thomas Was Alone? Sir Man wants to know.
No,
I wonder if you'd
I
like
want
it.
to. I want to.
Yeah, it's a video game. It is cute without using cute graphics. It's one of my favorite things about it. It gives you a feeling of cuteness while you're just looking at squares,
Yeah.
and they go on an adventure. It's pretty neat.
No, I have read briefly about it, but it is on my backlog for sure.
It was made by a guy who's been on the show before, Mike Bithell, who has similar ideas with you about he wants to go to the mental playground of game development and just make
Mm.
something that's got no commercial viability whatsoever if he wants to, but then try to sell it and hope for the best. That's what he did with Thomas Was Alone. But also,
Cool.
he does a day job. He was working on the Merlin game for Facebook,
Hmm.
and he says that's a completely different way of thinking,
Yeah.
more capitalist way of thinking, more training your brain to really work at its hardest, but then takes that mentality into his fun games he makes. He's a pretty neat dude. Yeah, I wish everyone who was on the show could just be with me in a room.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they're from all over the place. He lives in England, and a lot of people have been on the show in Scandinavia. That's where I thought you were going to be from. We should talk about Where Is My Heart, just because I want to, even though it's not a very smooth segue. That's a game that you were the studio head for, but weren't actively, wasn't your design or anything.
That's right.
Is
That's
that
right.
right?
Yep.
It came out on PlayStation Minis not that long ago, last
Yep.
year.
Yep.
I bought it because Destructoid's review for it was so glowing. Gave it a 9.5 out of 10. And what a weird game that is. Do you want to tell the people about it? Maybe they can go buy it now after you
Yeah.
tell them.
So, Where's My Heart, which I love, of course, I'm biased because I'm part of the studio, is a game by our friend Bernie Schulenberg, is a German guy, and he originally made this as a student, showed it at IGF Student Showcase in 2008, and then with my Gute Fabrik business partner Niels Dieneken, who's the illustrator on the game, they kind of worked on it. Also with some other people on the team, released it on PS3. It's this kind of cute platformer game where the screen is all jumbled up into like little squares, and so it becomes this kind of puzzle platformer where you're trying to in your head configure that this like broken fragmented space and reconstruct it in your head, and you can kind of move the pieces around almost like a jigsaw puzzle or something on the table. It's got beautiful sound by our collaborator Alessandro Coronas, and so it's well, okay. So it trying to think of what to say without taking up too much time. It's they're still porting it to PC, Mac, and Linux. So Bernie has a day job, so he's been kind of slowly porting it in his spare time, and that hopefully soon will be out for the broader world on Mac, PC, Linux with some more, maybe some extra levels and some additional stuff. So I'm
Cool.
really looking forward to it because I think that the beyond just the PS3 and the PSP world, people deserve to see this game. I love it. Again, I'm ultra biased because I'm part of the studio and friends with the guys, but it is one of my favorite games of the last few years. I think it's with the interesting backstory behind this game, just real quick, is it's actually kind of before, even though I was ragging on like meaning and like whatever expression in games, I think this is a really good example of how to do that right. So in many ways, the game was inspired by his like kind of a hike that he took with his parents that kind of went wrong, and the game is a lot about him exploring some of these issues with like his relationship with his parents and this like strange family relationship they have,
Huh.
which
That's very interesting.
which sounds like, I don't know, like on the surface of it, it's like, oh great, like a mopey game about my family or something, but it's actually really, what's nice about it, I think, maybe unlike some other messagey games, that it's subtle and it doesn't like force feed you this message. It's more just kind of there lurking in the background. I think it's great. Yeah, and I hope people try it. It is on PSP and Vita and PS3 currently.
Yeah, I get mad when people get too hung up on whether the game developer thought they were making a serious, important work. You know, come on, who cares? People say, "Oh, I'm not playing that game." Because clearly the guy who made it is pretentious and he thinks his game's pretty cool.
Right.
Who cares what the guy thought about his own game? Oh,
Yeah.
you think Cliffy B didn't think Gears of War was, you know, an important, meaningful piece of it? He play that, no problem, because it doesn't make people feel threatened at all. Let's just not be threatened by video games. It doesn't affect your self-esteem either way, whether you get a game or not, right?
Totally
Are you with me?
agree.
You with me?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Where Is My Heart is one of those games. A lot of people saw it and were like, oh, looks like it's trying to be smart. I don't think that like things that try to be smart because they might make me feel stupid. Forget it. But it's like a Kirby game mixed with Comic Zone. You're constantly like shuffling panels around and thinking about that, looking at cute, interesting characters. Like you said, the sound design, it comes as such a surprise that the sound effects are so emotive and realistic at times with a game with simple iconic graphics like that.
Yeah.
It's got a team building mentality. It's not surprising to hear that it was about his family on some level, because it's a family of cute little, looks like they're cookies or something. Cookies,
little monsters,
yeah, using their abilities to try to get through an obstacle course.
Yep.
If that's not a good video game design to start from, I don't know what it is. Guys, 3 minutes left. Oh yeah, let's mention Sports Friends again, texted Sinistar. Come on, you guys. It's
Sports Friends.
Sports
Kickstarter,
Friends.
local multiplayer.
How is this not funded yet, you guys? I thought
Make
you
it
liked
happen.
video games. And what do you get when you put in some money? Do you know off the top of your head?
Do I? Speaking of Vlambeer, anyone who pre-orders it at the $15 level gets an exclusive copy of Tennies, which is an amazing 1-versus-1 tennis game by Jan Willem Nijman, who is the other guy who works with Rami for Vlambeer and designs Super Crate Box and Loot Browsers. You think you've played tennis games? You haven't until you've played Tennies. It's truly again, it's for this, it was made for this No Quarter exhibition in New York. It's super good, feels really good, simple tennis game. So that's a bonus. At the $30 level, you get early alphas of the games kind of very soon after we finish the campaign. So you can start playing now. You don't have to wait for a year for us to port it. Again, we were trying to take it to PS3 and then also Mac, PC, Linux. And then, there's other tiers. After this phone conversation, I'm going to unveil our T-shirt design for the higher tier. And another tier, you get unreleased games, including a crazy multiplayer version of QWOP that Bennett is going to do for PC, Mac, I think. At least some home computers where you'll be able to competitively QWOP with gamepads, and that'll be sweet. And then some other unreleased games by Noah and Ramiro. So there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of rewards and stuff. Yeah, we're gonna try our best to kickstart this over the next week. We think local multiplayer is an incredibly important part of gaming culture and culture in general. Like gaming in the same place with your friends is amazing. So I like Sports Friends on Kickstarter. Check it out. Make it happen.
Awesome. What a good solid pitch. We have 1 minute left. I guess I'll wrap up. I gotta apologize about my dog, everybody. How bad's the dog been?
No, whatever. It's texture.
My wife is at a funeral. She normally cuddles the dog for an hour and a half during the show, but I had to lock the dog in a room with a cat. That probably wasn't a good idea. But normally the cat destroys the set of the show, so that's a whole other thing. Please follow Douglas on Twitter, you guys. It's at Dougal, Dooougle. Is that right?
Yes.
And he's also got his game studio. I can't spell very well. Maybe
German, Die Gute Fabrik, or just Gute Fabrik, Gute, then Fabrik.
On Twitter, and also
it's Gute Fabrik on Twitter, and then also on the web. So. And
the Sports Friends Kickstarter, go look at it. Just look up Sports Friends and just give them $15. You're not gonna miss it. That's that's like what, 3 cheeseburgers and a Coke. It's just 1 Coke out of your life and a few cheeseburgers for video games, and you'll get stuff for that money.
Video games that are deeply replayable that you can play for years. Not like a 4-hour experience that you'll be done with forever.
Right. So, not that there's anything wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that, but there's a lot of value, bang for your buck here.
That's right. So if you're a value-based customer, you will get what you pay for. And me, I'm at Tron Knots on Twitter, and this show is on iTunes. Listen to past episodes. We've had some great people like Alexander Bruce, maker of Antichamber. Have you ever met him?
Oh,
You
yeah.
guys,
I've been camping with him, actually.
That doesn't surprise me at all. You guys have a lot of smart ideas. You smart guys. I'm so glad you're on the show. So yeah, listen to Smart Guys on Sup Holmes on iTunes and also on Dtoid TV. You can watch past episodes. And I guess that's it. Thanks so
Thank you
much
for
for being
having
on the
me.
show, Doug. That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Well, first Holmes was born.